how you been able to overcome the what if somebody says that I'm working on this, the what ifs of anybody else will say regarding your career or any particular part in your life that you've been working on.
Well, I've been pretty much misunderstood, actually. It's a very good question because it's how I've handled it. Well, through my own coach, first of all. I hired myself a coach before being certified as a coach, so that gave me like a bigger scope of what was it about. But certainly when I was sharing it, especially with my family at first, it was like, I don't understand why you're doing this. Why don't you go to therapy? Or um, why don't you, I don't know, just suck it up and keep on living, right? So that was like a big uh, holding back for me when I was trying to launch it like a business after I graduated, because there was like this big misunderstanding of what it was. Then I started like looking up to similar coaches in the region, and I could only find, like fitness coaches or yoga teachers. And just recently, I found a life coach that does exactly what we do, and she was telling me how she has also struggled with sharing the message. Even the wording in Spanish is different than in English. So when you say coach, people think like in a soccer coach or in a school coach. So it's been more of a work of mouth to mouth, I believe, like sitting with people, like the close friends and family groups, and start sharing what is it that I'm trying to do. And lately, the podcast has been like the best tool to share the message, because you don't have to say coaching that much, but you
Yeah.
might be coaching someone during an interview. So it's like a harder road in, at least in Honduras. I don't know if Latin America in general, but at least in Honduras, where not even therapy is considered a thing. Coaching is just this new distracting thing just to get
Yeah.
people to talk about things they don't want to talk. So yeah, it's been hard.
Yeah. I kind of relate to it because obviously I'm from Mexico and I grew up where I remember even people in the community that I grew up with, people will mention, oh, that person is going to a psychologist. And the first
Mm,
comment that comes to my mind is like, oh, maybe he's probably crazy. That is the first thing we think when we're going in to try to take care of ourselves, to better up ourselves, on working on ourselves. That's the first things that I remember. And for me to overcome that, I had to reframe the whole entire framework that I have as a child. First, I had to go where it came from,
mm,
and based on that, I'm like, well, that's not true. Based on all the work that I've done and all the studies that I have done, you being an entrepreneur has been challenging throughout your whole entire career. You mentioned right now that you're going into a different direction. You have a podcast, but you have other particular entrepreneurial journeys that I want to talk about this, because everybody thinks about entrepreneurship and it's just like, I'm going to launch a business and it's going to flourish and I'm an entrepreneur and everything is going to be fine. However, you have a very successful business when it comes down to wine. Now you're going into this life coaching. However, before that, you launch another entrepreneurial journeys. You went
mhm,
into creating something different. Those things didn't work out. And I want to speak about that because to me it shows resilience. That's the first thing.
mm,
The second one, it shows that you really believe in yourself. Regardless of whatever you go through, you find a way to overcome those things and just continue your path. And number three, it shows that you really want to create something powerful. And not just that, you want to pass it on to others. What has been that journey for you? And what are the tools that you utilize in order for you to pretty much navigate through these ups and downs the entrepreneur journey brings to every single entrepreneur like you and like myself?
mm. That's an interesting question. Yes, I've been in the market, so to speak, since I was 17.
Mm,
So I entered the corporate world as young as 17, and I always had this little thing, like this little espinita, we say, like little thing there, that there's something else. I thought at first it was just the professional aspect of it. That's what I had learned. I had gotten, I was about to start university. Then I got my master's. And it was all about these professional goals, you know. I get a job, finish your studies, get a job, get married, have kids. And then no one tells you what happens. What the hell happens next? It's like you got married, you have two kids, you have a good job, life is over. Just drop dead. And
Yeah.
that was just like unacceptable for me. So I guess my entrepreneurial journey started when I had my second kid. No, my first kid. And I was just not comfortable in the corporate world anymore because I refused to be a slave of a schedule. So that was like the big shift in my mind. Like, what can I do? Started working with my brother in the family business, and that just wasn't enough because I had like different ideas. You know, I always got in trouble because of my speaking up. So that was a downside for me for a long time because I started to think like whenever I spoke, trouble came because I used to make people uncomfortable. So I had this belief for a very long time until recently, until I certified as a coach actually, that whenever I spoke, something bad came out of it. So I believe that for maybe a decade, I was being held back by myself because I didn't speak up enough. But certainly I would go out and do something different. I'm still consider myself a restless person. When I started my journey as a formal entrepreneur, it was a business that my brother handed down to me. So it wasn't that entrepreneurial at all. The entrepreneurial part was the independence of making decisions on my own, handling the budget on my own, not being the second one of someone, but now having to be responsible for a bunch of people that were getting their salary from me. So that was my first experience. And that wasn't completely satisfying either because it's a business in the oil industry. It's a gas station and a convenience store, which is a good business, but you know, there's what else you can do? You sell three products, four products, and that's about it. And then pandemic hit. And that was a big down for every market, especially oil, even though we were first necessity. It just tested, I think, all my resilience and skills that I didn't know I had. They just came up. And one of the first decisions everybody was making was do we fire people or not? And my first rebellious decision was not to fire people. And we just hold on to them until, I don't know, a couple of months later, we could start working again. And I think that gave me just a proof or evidence that you can always make something different. This was 2020, right? 20, oh, yeah, that was 2020. But before that, on December 19, I was having a conversation about this dream I had about making a wine. Just whatever wine, maybe water, maybe wine, maybe tequila, but it was something around our name, like the Lopez Wagner, which are my last names. And as I was talking with whom now is my partner, he said, you know what? I can make that happen for you because he lives in the States. And I'm like, well, this is one of the first persons that say I'm not crazy, right? And the pandemic hadn't started yet, but I flew to San Francisco. Uh, I guess I didn't plan it very well. I just said, let's go to San Francisco, make some wine. And as I was coming back home after signing the contract, pandemic hit. They closed every airport. And then this was March 13, I think, for Honduras. And as I recall now, we had all the gas stations problems on our back. You know, do we fire people? When are we going to open? We have inventory. All of this was going on one side of my brain. And the other side of my brain was just, how do we keep going on the wine business? So it was a parallel and paradox, actually, for me, because how am I investing in something when I'm about to lose everything on the other side? Call it illusion, uh, irresponsibility, lack of, I don't know, lack of fear, I guess. It was just something that just pulled me to something higher. And as an entrepreneur, you might say that I'm well trained, but actually, I haven't been formally trained for all these things that happened during the way. No one was trained for the pandemic, no matter how many leadership courses you have taken. So I believe it's more about proving yourself every day and having something or someone to look out for. And that's where you get like that grit about this is not going to defeat me. I can do this step by step. I'll just wake up one day after the other and see where it goes. And maybe it's a lack of planification. Maybe it's a, I don't know, yeah, lack of planification, I might say, that just gets
yeah,
me going. Because since I don't plan far ahead, I'm not scared of whatever happens next because I don't know what's going to happen next. So
yeah,
that's how we entered the wine business. And 4 or 5 years later, here we are with a brand that's well positioned now in our market, and we're importing wines from other countries as well. And we're starting to create a culture where, besides selling wine, we are educating people on the science of wine. And the servers are our main pillar because no one before had come to them to educate them about what they were selling. So
yeah,
that also was like the first thing where coaching and entrepreneurial skills matched, because there was always this yearning of how do we share this knowledge so that everyone can benefit from it. So
yeah.
that's a bit around what entrepreneurship looks like, and then mixing it with the coaching business. It's just the same philosophy for me. Just you move one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. This is really fascinating to for me to hear how everything started just but just it's not necessarily proving yourself, but just speaking out.
Mm,
However, song along the lines, you were in a way you're putting into a frame that whether it's society, family, the community we grew up, or Latino background, that no, this is what you're supposed to do. As this is your persona, this is your play
mm,
role, this is you stay in this box, and something inside of you is like, there's other things that I want to do. Can those be possible? And the interesting thing too that not many people realize is finding people that believes in the craziness that you believe.
mm,
Regardless of whatever crazy, it doesn't matter. There's no question. It's just like, I like that. I can make it happen.
mhm,
That just instant believes the kids. That's courage. Courage can only get when somebody else believes in the things that you believe. However, you
mhm,
had to be able to articulate the things that you have in your head very well presented to someone else so they believe and they can see that particular belief in that particular path that you have just in your mind, and you should start speaking. And now here you are, create a whole entire business. Everything is going well, and congratulations. I'm really, really proud to hear that everything is working out and you are succeeding and everything is going amazing for you. Now you're going into this coaching. Yes, you're creating this coaching business and you start, in a way, mixing it up. However, throughout that journey, you start finding out that not everyone else is teaching this and you see another opportunity. And to me, it's just like you open one door and then there's more opportunity. And then you start evolving. You continue to work in yourself. That continuous personal growth that you have within yourself is able, based on what you're telling me, is able to see other opportunities that probably were there, but you weren't able to see them yet. Until
mhm,
you start working within yourself, you hire somebody else to start working within yourself, your personal growth, and all the things you want to create, and then you start seeing more opportunities.
That's a very nice way to put it. Thank you, Omar. It is true. If I hadn't had a coach, I wouldn't have done everything that I did. The minute I realized that this was a thing, that coaches existed, I
Yeah,
said, I need to get one for myself. I really need one of these.
yeah,
What's the worst that could happen? I mean, the worst that could happen is I don't have any change. Perfect. I stay the way I am. But yes, I believe I am the best example of how a coach can really transform your life. And it's only through the action that comes after the coaching. Because that was
yeah,
another realization, when you get into a path of learning, meditating, applying techniques, going to your sessions, hiring a therapist also to go by your side. But then comes a moment when, hey, I have all this information now. What am I supposed to do with all of it? Because one
yeah,
thing is what you transform and liberate from the inside, which is completely helpful. But once
yeah,
you open that space, I think it's only natural that new ideas come afloat. And then you
yeah,
grasp those ideas. And some might work, some might not. but you
Yeah.
know that everything happens for a reason. So if you're having this idea because you opened this space, maybe we should go through this path and see what it has for us. So yeah, I definitely the being a coach, having a coach, I believe makes all the difference in your personal life and afterwards in whatever you're going to give back. It might be only your family. It doesn't have to be a big audience, but maybe you're transforming other lives through your companies, through your family, through your children. And that's a huge impact just right there.
Yes. And that I appreciate the fact that you mentioned the many ways that you can impact the lives of others when you start working within yourself.
Mm,
Because a lot of people never seen it that way. It's like, oh, I'm going to work on myself and maybe other people is not going to get impacted. The
mm,
impact, that's what starts creating a ripple effect. And now it's flourishing in your life. And now you have more opportunities. You're able to see a path that probably were pictured 5 6 years ago, and people frame you as crazy, like that's nonsense, that doesn't make any sense right now. But now you start seeing it, and it's creating this beautiful thing for you of entrepreneurship. And you have a podcast where you bring guests and you speak about authenticity. And just in this conversation alone, obviously we had a previous conversation, and just this conversation alone, there's pure authenticity for me, that you're showing, because you you are an open book, and you're not afraid to speak out your mind. At the same time, you're like, oh, that's very interesting, like that's a
mm,
different way. You open to see new opportunities and new experiences. And oftentimes I tell people, it's like, as entrepreneurs, what is the one thing that you will suggest to somebody that wants to be, or wants to become, or wants to enter the entrepreneurial journey? And I said, be open to new experiences and ideas. That is the first step. Then
mhm,
find the people that believes in your ideas and
mhm.
start creating that. For you, you have a podcast now, and you partnering up with people that believes in the ideas you have, and you're able to craft something beautiful. And to me, to see your podcast the way it's being creative, to me is like, wow, that's a great idea. And I mentioned it to you, like, you have a superpower in your podcast, and you're like, what is it? And
Uh-huh.
I was able to see it, and I was like, this is something magical. And for me as an entrepreneur, when I see something magical, I'm like, this is a superpower. If you can tap
Mm,
into this, you will be able to create different things. I want to talk about your podcast, because you're bringing into a podcast for all the people that's doing podcasts. What is the first thing that you will recommend for people that wants to go into the podcasting, that you were able to simplify the way you want to take the journey in the podcasting?
the first thing is just start. I mean, the first podcast that we recorded was, it came from a place of service. It's always from a place of service. So we did it in my living room in my apartment. We bought three small microphones and we sat on the floor, the table that's in the living room. And, we were just in our regular clothes, just talking about a personal growth topic that was interesting for the three of us. And that's how it started. And this was 2022. That's 3 years ago. But the fact of having started it just gave us the idea of how we wanted it to be. And then we started to tweak it accordingly. And then we had a big pause. Then I started again. Then we had another big pause because we were scared of a lot of things. And finally, I believe it's about starting, even if you have to speak by yourself on a microphone, because maybe that's your biggest fear. Second would be, don't worry, maybe no one's listening. So what's the harm if no one's listening? I mean, it's just a practice. And the third thing is, if you are, if you do want to share something through a podcast, then you should be listening to podcasts or watching them in YouTube because it's already been done. So sometimes we're very much arrogant in the aspect that we want to create these new wonderful things, but over a platform that already exists. I'm not inventing Spotify or YouTube, and I'm just following a trend of sharing a message through this platform. So there's other people that have done it better and before, and they're also willing to share their experiences. So it's basically just starting and listen to a whole bunch of podcasts to see which one resonates or which style goes best with you. If it's solo, if it's an interview, if it's a group podcast. I even had a podcast with my kids in order to see if that was something that resonated with people. So just experiment, but listen to a whole bunch of podcasts to determine which line would you like to follow.
That is beautiful, though. The fact that you are able to, you mentioned something key for me, and it's like, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Mm,
And I think many of us that want to go into a journey on entrepreneur, being entrepreneurs, we're always trying to reinvent anything and everything. And sometimes
mhm,
we're not willing to even share because we think that somebody else is going to steal our ideas. And
mhm,
people mention it to me several times, have mentioned it to me. I'm like, Omar, you're like an open book. You're not afraid to share any ideas. I'm like, aren't you afraid to, why don't you trademark your brand? Why don't you X, Y, and Z? And I'm like,
mhm,
I just, this is about service and this is what I want to do. And
mhm.
it's like, aren't you afraid that people is going to steal your ideas? I'm like, oh, good. That's great. That means it works. If they
Yeah,
can do
actually.
something with that idea, it's something create something better and more powerful. Let's go for it. I'm like,
Mhm,
I'm rooting for them to do that, and for me to see the way you express yourself when podcasting is like, I'm absorbing podcasting because people just like, how can I become better? First, you got to listen to yourself. Trust me, I listen to my podcast, and oftentimes that's the best way I can learn. That's the best way for me to reframe certain things that I'm trying to speak in the way I'm like, oh, I could take it this way. And me able to
mhm,
see different paths that I could take the podcast. However, whatever happens in this moment, I'm not afraid to go any type of direction, right? Because that's how it evolves. Everything is energy. And I appreciate the fact that you're very open when it comes down to all the things that you have experienced, that you explore, and the fact that you continue to work on yourself, and now you're working with people within the podcast. That to me is something unique that you're bringing into the podcasting. I don't know
Thank you
if you
so
ever
much.
noticed that.
Thank you so much. I get it recently, from the comments. I think I never knew, especially after 3 years of starting and ending and starting and pausing. I never realized that all this pausing and experiencing was going to get us to this point where actually people are finally connecting. And they connect because one of our principles was, do we invite famous people from the country, or do we do it with regular women that have just equally great stories to share? And we
Yeah,
decided to go that way because I felt that it was more authentic for me to make an interview to someone that had a personal story in their hands. And the questions just flow. They're not like pre made questions, or the life of someone that a bunch of people already know. This is a new
yeah,
person, maybe someone that no one knows. I mean, no one like famously knows, and they're just making their way just the same way I am. So it became more relatable, and people are connecting a lot with the messages. And the beautiful thing, it's not my message; it's the message that I can get from the other person that has more importance than my story in itself. So that's
yeah,
where we found the connection. And that's the beautiful part that we're enjoying right now. It's okay, who else, what story can we tell? Who else has a story? And everyone, every single human being has a story of resilience or failure or success that they can
yeah,
share with others, especially in this country, in this culture where I believe that there's a lot of hopelessness, I think is the word. Like we've lost every hope of being successful. People are just comfortable in their jobs and they're just running an automatic pilot. And that really hurts my heart. It's really painful to see people not believing that they can do something else. So yeah, that's the most rewarding part. of having other people tell their stories instead of just telling your own a bunch of times.
I want to stay here because you mentioned something beautiful. I mean, it is beautiful to hear you. You can see the other side of the coin. Like I like to say that, meaning you see people that they pretty much they go to school, they graduate, they have a family, they buy the house, and that's it. That's for them. That's their dream. For them,
Mm-hmm.
that's life.
Mm-hmm.
How, if you can recall, when you were able to start questioning those things that you were able to experience, because you had to, in order for you to start believing, you had to experience it in life. You have to be able
Mm-hmm.
to see it. I can recall myself as a kid. I was questioning as a kid. I remember myself questioning, like, why do people has to just go to work, come back, get drunk on the weekends, go hang over on Monday, and is this, and it's like, and we're living in this community.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Like, and nobody could answer. And sometimes I will get, beat up by my parents. Like, what kind of questions are those? Go to you crazy? And I get all those things. But now everything makes sense. But myself, I remember as a kid. What about you? When you start questioning yourself, like, hold on, this, as cool as it looks and sounds, I just not buying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the word here is disrespect. You're disrespectful if you question.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always disrespectful because I always questioned. I mean, in my own way, but it was no matter what tone I used, it was always disrespectful. So I felt that I was very unfair. So that unfairness, I think, just kept me going unconsciously into different directions. But the precise moment was when I found myself unhappy in my marriage. 13 years later, 2 kids later, I married when I was 22. So I was very little. And by this time, I was 35, I guess. So, yes, 13, 14 years have gone by. And I had everything. I have had the dream job, then the next dream job, and the next dream job. Then I was working in the family business, which was a good thing. Then I got my own company, which was pretty good scaling, right? I had a good husband, 2 wonderful kids, good schools, the large house with the patio and the dog, and I always found myself crying in the bathroom in the night. And I couldn't decipher what it was because I had everything. And I even had the drunken weekends with my family. And that wasn't even enough. Yeah. So I had the parties, I had everything. And in that moment I started to question what was it? And I realized in a very short time that I was living under a regime that wasn't my own. My husband he is actually still to today. We try to have more modern conversations now that I'm a coach, but he's a very structured human being, as most of the people around me. So for him, it was always what it was supposed to be. And that supposedness just killed me in the inside. So I discovered that I had stopped being myself as soon as I married. I never had a chance to be me. I couldn't be loud. I couldn't have a glass of wine in the evening because that would label me as an alcoholic. Um, I couldn't go to, I don't know, gatherings that were, public or scandalous. I had to go to every birthday party, even if I didn't want to, just because we had to go to the Anna's birthday and have to go to Pedrito's birthday party. It was so exhausting being like pulled through life. And I remember saying to him one day as we were going to work, do you ever feel like life is pushing you and you have no control over the car you're driving? And he just looked at me and said, like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And that was like my aha moment where I do feel like I have no control of my life. By the time I go to work, I'm just as well as dead. And that's when the reflection started. This was 2000, well, way before coaching, way before pandemic. That was 2016, maybe 2017. And then I woke up on New Year's, 2017, I think it was, or 2018. I woke up New Year's Eve in a town here in Honduras called Copan Ruinas. And I woke up knowing that what had happened the past day or weekend or the past end of the year was not how I wanted to live anymore. And I cried myself during the whole trip back, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And it happened. I got divorced in 2020, so that would be like 2 or 3 years of just, is it right? Is it not right? Do I tell my family? Who do I speak to? Because no one was going to understand what was going on inside of me. And for my ex-husband, it was like, what are you missing? What's wrong with you? You have everything. So he couldn't understand what was really going on inside of me. And just that just drew us apart far more. So it was like a long agony
Yeah.
until finally the pandemic hit. And it was like, okay, we're all gonna die soon. So I might as well just start living the life I want in my own terms without feeling guilty for doing something that Leanne is willing to do. Like, I don't know, be loud. I am loud.
Yeah.
I don't have a low pitch. So how can I control my voice? I like to have people at my house every day. And I want to do that and start doing it now. So that's kind of a brief summary of how it went down.
Thank you so much for being so open and for sharing a little bit about the story and how everything got you into what you're doing now and start discovering more about yourself. And I think hearing you speak and telling us all this, one of the things that I picked up is, do I want to continue to live this particular life where I just no longer feel like I'm having control of my own life? I feel like something is pushing me. I'm just going through the waves without having any
Mhm.
control, and sometimes it feels like I'm suffocating myself. I'm drowning myself into it. And when you ask somebody else that you decided to create a partnership, create the life that you were meant to be in that particular time, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You see this proportion in a way, and you're like, hold on 1 second, something just doesn't click. You mentioned it's a how moment. What would you say to these people that are going through the hard times of trying to create something, and they're in a situation like yourself where you're supposed to have X, Y, and Z, and that's supposed to be life. But something inside of them, they want to create something. What words can you say to them, whether it's female or male? It doesn't matter. What would you say to those people that you, based on your own experience, can help them navigate through the season they are going through?
The moment the question arises, Omar, that's your flag. The moment your automatic pilot goes off for a second and this thought just crosses your mind, that's the moment you have to pause. And it doesn't mean that you have to make a decision right there and now, but it just means that you're off the automatic pilot. Just give it a chance. Give it a chance to observe and see what's going on. I'm not saying that every couple who feels unhappy has to get a divorce. I mean, there's lots of couples that have worked it out, but from a space that someone has created. So just be attentive to that flags. We tend to ignore all these moments and we tend to suffer. And I would say for male and female, when you find yourself crying alone at night, even if it's silently in your bed with your partner asleep, or you have to go into the bathroom because you have to clean up your tears, that's a clear indication that something's wrong. It's not, it'll pass. Like we usually say, it'll pass. I'm just depressed for today. I've had a hard day. That's not true. It's not freaking true. There's something going on and something's alerting you. I have to do something. So I think my message is don't ignore the signals that your inner self is telling you. It's not only the outside. There are signs. There are very clear signs. We just prefer to ignore them because what on the other side, it's very scary.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's very powerful. That's so beautiful. And I think A lot of people is going to resonate with that message just because we oftentimes ignore those particular signals. You mentioned it very well. Like, we don't want to pay attention. We're like, I shall pass. Those
Mm-hmm.
type of words, like those little words, I shall pass. I'll deal with it. Oh, it's okay. I'm not feeling well right now. I might feel later on. And the
Mm-hmm.
message that you share with us is very powerful. Now, you obviously breathe on authenticity. It took a little bit of time for you to embrace it. Not necessarily embrace it. I think you embrace it at some point, somehow along the your own path. You listen more to the outside noise, which is totally
Mm-hmm.
fine. Something has to happen. Life changes. Continue to work on yourself. And now you completely embrace it. I have a loud voice. I have a loud pitch. I have X, Y, and Z. This is me. And you fully embrace it. What can you share? What tips do you have for these people that wants to work and becoming more authentic?
That's a very beautiful question. I believe I embraced authenticity just recently, maybe cou- half a year, 6 months, 4 months. But I've been trying to find it for a very long time. And the thing that triggered it the most, and when I found the word, it was I was so exhausted and I didn't know why. Even though I had gotten the divorce, even though I was working on my projects, it still felt the same, pretty much the same. And it was not after I started therapy alongside with the coaching that I started to realize what was in my subconscious and the pain that I had from not being able to be myself. So I didn't have that word in my vocabulary as strong as I have it right now because I realized that I was always wearing a mask. And I know this sounds very cliche, and we have to wear our masks when we go to work or we have to play a role as a mom, but it's a different thing to play a role than to pretend to be someone else and to pretend to be a good person, because then I realized that the reason I was exhausted is because I was always feeling like a bad person. And all this search of certifying as a life coach and trying to help other people came from no other place but me feeling like I wasn't enough for myself or for others. So that was like a second big layer for me to realize that even though I had all this information inside of me and all these techniques, I was still trying to please everybody around me so that nobody would think that I was a bad girl. And
Yeah.
that was another process of delayering and deconstructing who I believe I was. I'm still, of course, working on it very hard. And the podcast is actually my medicine because now we're promoting authenticity as a core value for a lot of people who I know are hiding behind these masks, as well as I did in so many tiny aspects of life as, I don't know, um, a meeting at your kid's school. There you go, and you put the mask on. Or the birthday party that your family has you attending to, there's another mask. Or the things that we want to do and we can't share because they're going to sound crazy, that's another mask. So I realize that there's a lot of unmet potential and most of it sad situations. And it breaks my heart to see people having a conversation with me and I can see the mask that they're putting when I know all the situations that they have in the back. Maybe because the thieves became a taboo, or no one wants to talk about divorce, no one wants to talk about infidelity, or no one wants to talk about personal growth. It's also a taboo, on and on. So authenticity really came just a few months ago for me, and I'm just practicing it. I'm trying to practice it, and as long as I don't hurt other people, I mean, I'm entitled to my personal traits and values. Because what happens in this road is that you become so complacent. I think that's the other part of authenticity for me is not inauthenticity, is just how you are applying to other people's benefit and you're disregarding your own needs and values. You don't even remember what your values are anymore because you're trying to please other people, and then you feel bad, and there's this whole cycle of feeling guilty and trying to do personal growth to feel better. But that's the wrong way to approach personal growth. When you're not growing for others, you're first growing for yourself. And I think that's the new path that has opened for me, like a new mindset of what authenticity really means and how it is affecting what we're all living in this society.
Yeah. This is incredible. Thank you for sharing, and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned something really powerful, and I want to put an emphasis on that because authenticity for me means more than knowing yourself, understand what you're fighting for,
Mm,
understand what are your strengths, what are your values. The minute you comprehend that to your core, right? So for me, I there's I have values on my brand and I have values on my own myself. I always tell people like they enhance both. They
mm,
had to enhance both. I have my own values, but I'm going to give you the values of my brand are just five. It's community, personal growth, leadership, love, and innovation.
mm,
There's a reason why this podcast is called Mentes Progresivas.
mhm,
Nothing is just out of thinking like, oh, this is a cool name. It has
mm,
nothing to do with that. Anything and everything that I'm doing and I'm creating until this particular moment of my life, even personal life, anything and everything has to be guided by my core values. And it has created something amazing for me. It has been a point where you detach for certain things and you create a different path just like you. Not everybody understand that.
mhm,
However, once that started becoming so strong, it has opened doors that I knew it was there. I just wasn't brave enough to see it, probably, or sometimes even to knock into it. A good
mm,
example is what I'm doing now. I created my own business as a personal training and the coaching business and the e-commerce. But I remember to the pandemic taught me that, oh, look, this is this opportunity. This is where technology is going to take us, right? So for me, I saw an opportunity and I'm like, I need to embrace this. Like this, how am I going to be able to embrace this particular new opportunity? And when I, I attach it to my core values, I present it to the other person. The other person is like, you're crazy and it's never going to work. And I remember when that person, I presented the business program to the person. When he said that to me, I took a pause and I said, you are correct. It's never going to work here. You are absolutely
mhm,
correct. And on my way home, I remember I had to create this. I have the plan. I had the business plan already. How am I going to create that? What was going into my mind, but everything is attached to what I'm creating now and everything, anything that I'm doing now. So for me, the fact that you mentioned your values and getting to know yourself and continue to the personal growth, it is so beautiful. And the fact that you are able to identify certain things that this is one of our core values. We had to stick into it, and there's no surprise why so many things are flourishing now within yourself and with the businesses that you are creating, and obviously with the podcast. But I want to stay a little more in the personal growth, just because in our community, in our Latino community, is a taboo.
mm,
And it's hard for me, just like you. It's like people people have no idea how much work you really had to put into it, what it
mhm,
really takes. We think like, oh, I went to psychologist, I went to a therapist, I went to coaching for 2 months, and then you resolve all your problems. And I'm like, that doesn't work that way. Like, I mean, I
mhm,
list on my own experience. I've been to therapy, I've been to psychologists, and obviously coaching. Now I'm doing mentoring. But for me, it's like I never seen it that way. Like I remember as a kid, like, oh, what would it be like talking to another person about some of the crazy things, and not that person not judging me or telling me I'm crazy,
Mm-hmm.
just listening to me and questioning me, what, where is that coming from, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I started going through, I remember like there was a lot of crying. There were so many things that I just needed to let it out because I grew up with men don't cry, right? Obviously, there's one.
Of
Well, that
course.
one that was for
Yeah.
me to work so hard because I remember men don't cry, but it hurts. Men don't cry. I'm like, okay, well, I don't cry. So I start suppressing. When I start letting everything out, everything changed for me, right? For me, it's so many changes, but there was so many layers. And until this day, there are layers. I always tell people like the more you get to know yourself, the more things you're able to spot that you need to work on. And once you're
Mm-hmm.
spotting, get involved into it. Do not be afraid to go into it because the minute you try to avoid it, trust me, it will come. Whether you're doing it right now or when something in your subconsciousness gets activated later on, you will need to work on it. So it's either you
Mm-hmm.
do the work right now or you do it later. It doesn't matter. It's going to come back to you.
Yeah,
For
totally.
you, in this particular journey of personal growth, what has been the most challenging thing that you have experienced and has helped you the most to navigate your own personal journey?
Facing my past, I believe. I was trying to work from a place of just me, like what was wrong with me? What is it that I'm doing wrong?
Mm,
But like in the present moment, and all based on character. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm too reactive. Maybe I'm too, um, yeah, defensive, reactive, impatient, and it's all this characteristics. Maybe there's something's wrong with me. The minute things changed, I believe for me was when I realized that I had to go to the past, even though I didn't want to because I want to focus on the future. I had to go to the past and accept all the pain that I had, even though if it was done unconsciously by the people around me. So the first thing I worked on was my relationship with my mother, because we have a beautiful family relationship, but in my vision of family, it was perfect, supportive, all the good connotations, but I had missed all the little cracks that every family has.
yeah,
So I had to go back there and fix my relationship with my mother. I think she didn't notice it, but it was more of accepting. I hadn't accepted that I had this blind spot with her that made me very reactive. It also made me very empowered and very determined, but it also it hurt me a lot regarding my character because I was trying to imitate something from her. So I had to work on that. It was like the main pillar. And you don't want to go back and blame your parents for anything. Of course, it's not their responsibility, but it was my responsibility to heal. So once I opened that space, as you were saying, once I opened that space, another thing came up. So now it was my partner. Like, what is it with my current relationship? Because we had dated 20 years before, so this was not an exactly a new relationship. So I had to go back and work on that also and forgive myself for the decisions that I had made back then when I was 18, 19, and
yeah,
forgive myself for that. And when once I covered that, another thing came up, and it was my ex-husband. So I started to target the people in my life that had been around me when I was hurt at that moment. So I believe that real growth came from the humbleness of accepting that I had been hurt, even though I had overcome it. I had felt hurt. I had made wrong decisions. They had made wrong decisions as well. And that was the best we could do uh, at that time because we didn't have the tools or the knowledge we have now. And that's so easily said right now. Like you were a different person 20 years ago, and now you're a different person. But come on, going back there, that little 20-year-old. I mean, it's painful. It is. And the last thing I worked on, because I was just pushing it, and as you said, everything that you hold back, it's gonna come back. Just it, give it time; it will come out. And when I had worked my mom, my partner, my ex-husband, I didn't want to touch this subject because it was too painful. And then I realized maybe a bunch of people can really relate or, uh, yeah, relate and start talking more openly about it. Is about an abortion I had when I was 21. When I was 21. And I hadn't spoken about it just recently to my mom, obviously my ex-husband, who was the dad at that moment. And I hadn't forgiven myself for that. And I think I'm still carrying some of that, but that was the action that made me a bad person, you know? And then I went and got a divorce, so that made me a more bad person. And then I had this character, and that made me more of a bad person. So for me, it came personal growth is still coming from healing
Yeah.
because things will still come up, even though I have a positive thinking mindset. That doesn't mean that I'm still reacting or acting according to the guilt I have from the past or from the pain I had from other people that have inflicted pain on me, even though it was not conscious or intentional. So it's healing, forgiving, and that little cycle of healing, forgiving, moving forward. I think that I don't know by now if I answered the question,
No, thank you.
but
Thank you so
that's
much.
basically the big moments of growth came from the past. It was not from you.
Wow. I really appreciate the fact that you being so open. Thank you so much for being so kind enough to share a little more on what really personal growth is, because we oftentimes think that it's just the surface.
Mm,
But I love the fact that you were able to go to the root. Not that many people is willing to go to that. To me, you mentioned a beautiful word at the beginning of the podcast, and you're saying breathe. It is
mm,
clear to me the fact that you breathe
mm,
for not just for the things that you have that are doing, but for the things that you have experienced. And it is very powerful to me to hear that you continue to work in yourself and you acknowledge all the things that you had work. Because we had to acknowledge all the things that we had work, because we
mm,
oftentimes we grew up with like, oh, you did this, it's okay, you can do more.
mm,
There's never that acknowledgement like, no, I put my like I've been doing a lot of work. I know that. I'm really proud of myself. You
mm,
obviously acknowledge that and continue to work, but you like embrace it. There's more. Once you spot it, you are willing to go to. And once again, it's really incredible, inspiring to hear all about your story. It really emphasizes the not just the journey you've been through, but all the beautiful things that you've been able to achieve. Whether it doesn't matter what type of life you had or you were handled, you always been willing to navigate to it, work on it, and you just continue to push yourself. And I have no idea where's that coming from, I'll be honest with you. But that's not something that you have right now. That's something that you have since you were a kid. However,
mm,
that was pushed down. And I don't know
mm,
where. Because listening to you, the way your eyes light up and everything to me is like, oh, wow, that's very powerful. And when you start telling your story, part of me starts moving. I'm like, oh, wow, that's so beautiful. And I find a lot of simulation, like a lot of things like, oh, I do relate about this. And I hope people can relate to it because your story is so beautiful. And once again, being so open to tell your story, it's not easy. And many of us are really afraid to tell our story. And the other thing that I want to mention too is just how powerful it is just to acknowledge your path. You mentioned forgiveness, the healing, and just the continued personal growth. And I'm going to share this with you because a psychologist that I brought in came out to me, and I think I mentioned it to you, that sometimes it wasn't about healing, because I remember that telling myself, I'm never going to be able to stop writing forgiveness letters.
Mm,
Like, I never going to stop because it's just so much, right? I always wanted to understand, why did you do certain things to me? Why did you behave certain ways? And I remember that person sharing, just like, Omar, sometimes it's not about healing. Sometimes it's about understanding that what you had at the moment, that's all you have.
mm,
Now you know better, you can do better. To me, it
mhm,
kind of like was like, oh, that is so beautiful. Like, you have no idea how much you helped me to release the pressure that we put
mhm,
ourselves, because I gotta heal this, I gotta work on this, I gotta this. Like, no. Sometimes it's not like that. It's like sometimes it's not true, at least from my own personal experience. Sometimes it's
mhm,
like it's ingrained in there. It's
mhm,
part of me. Like you.
mhm, mhm,
You experience that particular event, and you were thinking like, I don't have to tell anybody. But the minute you start thinking about it, there are things happening within yourself. There's more growing because you're telling your story. And the beautiful thing is that you telling that story, you even created more impact that probably you had never even imagined. I don't know if you ever noticed that or realized that.
mhm. No, I think it just comes, you know. Um, I believe in honesty a lot. And when you said, where is it coming from? Where is this resilient or grit coming from? And this I tell to every mom I cross paths with. Uh, if something was right about my upbringing, was that despite all the imperfections my family had, my mom always told us that we were the best ones around. Like her kids were the best at everything. Of course, that has consequences. Then in life, when you're not the best and you're frustrated. But when I compare families and I say, my mom always told us, you can be the best. You don't have to be, but you can be the smartest. You can be the most beautiful. You can be the most kind. You can be the best, etc., etc. And I compare it to other families where it's all about judgment. Since you were a kid, I can see how life developed in a different way. So, yeah, a shout out to moms and dads, in my case, by my mom, but to parents in general, because they have the power just to at least, they won't make a perfect life for the kids, but they can just put that seed in them that they are able to achieve anything they want. I think that was what my mom's message all the time. You can't do it? Of course you can. What are you saying? Not in very nice words, though, but it was that you can do everything, you can do everything, you can do everything. And that just gets stuck in your brain. So no matter how you go through life, at least you know you're able to do whatever it is you propose to do. So I think that for me was like a big life changer, and I wish more families had that, so that the path would be a little bit easier, than on the judgmental side of things. Um, and regarding the experiences and opening new paths, I've always been a bit shy about sharing too much of my past because part of me wants to be, I don't know, to let people have their own space and life guidance until the moment I realized that it was helpful for me to listen to stories from someone else. And also as a therapy for me to, I think first as a therapy for me, if I'm able to speak about it, it means that I've accepted and reconciled with the idea of that person 20 years ago. And from that space, now I feel the need to give my testimony back for other people to relate and do the same. So maybe, as you said, it's not about completely healing, but accepting without shame that that happened. I can't change it. And now, how do we move forward? Maybe I don't know the path, as you were asking, but I just know it's a different path. I don't know
Yeah.
where it's gonna go, but at least I know it's different than holding it in. And
Mm.
maybe I had to go through that for a reason. And maybe one person in the future will need to hear this and can relate and can come back to me and say, hey, well, what would you have done different? Or
Yeah.
how do you get over this? Maybe. or maybe
Yeah.
not. But at least it's out there. I'm not holding it in anymore.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you're very open, and I really appreciate the message that you share about how powerful our words as a parent can be and have in the future generations. Um, it I ask you because I'm like, it has to come somewhere from very little, and you were able to answer. And I'm like, oh, that is so beautiful. As a parent, I strongly, I'm very advocate of telling my daughter, like, no, you're very creative. You can do this. And she doesn't question it, but she looked at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, trust me, you just had to get in this. Like, how can I support you? Let's do this. So I'm always doing X, Y, and Z, allowing her to be herself. I'm like, you don't want to do it, it's okay.
Hmm.
That is, it's totally fine.
Hmm.
However, as a parent, sometimes I think we are overprotective. Just it's nature. It's nature. We want to see our kids succeed. But I can relate to you when it comes down to the powers and the power of the parents, the way we were creative. I remember too. My mom will say things just like you, in her own way, in her own way. Sometimes it's screaming, which is fine. I respect that. Everybody grows up. It's totally fine. I'm just really glad that I've never been, I just, that's never been my style to talk to my daughter. And to this day,
Mhm.
knocking on wood, I had never yelled or hit my daughter. That's something that I remember. I promised her when I carried her for
Mhm.
the first time. I said, this will never happen to you. I promise you that. And to this day, I'm really proud. She's 16 years, so I'm
Oh,
really proud of
wow.
me. There's been times when I'm like, I need a second.
Uh-huh.
I need a second. Yes, because like I need a second, especially me. I need a second, and I go just stay, take deep breaths. And I'm like, what were we talking about? Like, what's happening? I but that's me. But that comes with a lot of personal work.
Mhm.
Talking about personal work, like you as parents, we got to continue to work on. If we want to see our kids succeed, we have to be able to continue to work. We had to be able to be the example.
Mhm.
We had to lead with example, and that's what great leaders, and you're a great leader, by the way, by all the things that you create, and you obviously you have your kids, and I'm pretty sure they able to see all this work that you have done, and I'm pretty sure that they are really proud of you. And Leon, it's been really fascinating conversation with you. I had a really incredible time in this podcast. Thank you for coming in. But before I let you go, I would like to ask you if there's anything that I haven't been able to let you share that you would like to share with the audience. Anything, it can be about your journey, it has to be your podcast, anything that you want the audience to know.
Oh, thank you, Omar. It has been really, really nice talking to you again. It's just like a normal conversation, like the ones we should be having every day with the
Yeah.
people around us. So thank you for opening the space for me and my story. I would like to say to people, personal growth, I know it's not easy to try to work and deconstruct what you have and build something new, but it is completely worth it. I mean, in one perspective is try to see it not as destroying something that you were and building something new, but more of like growth, as the word says. It's just we're meant to grow more and beyond what we've been told. So I would like
Yeah.
to encourage everyone just to jump in the train, try it. There's a lot of techniques, there's a lot of little things. It doesn't have to be coaching necessarily. It can be therapy, it could be access bar sessions, it could be a lot of things, just as long as you understand that growth is natural as human beings. And because you reach 30 or 40 or 50, you still have half of your life ahead of you. So let's
Wow.
not die before we die.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's very powerful. I appreciate that. That's a really strong message. Let's not die before we die. What a powerful statement. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for the audience. I really hope that you resonated so much with this. Hope you find a couple tools that Leon was able to share. And obviously through your experience, people can relate to, and hopefully they find it that they're not alone. Because
Mm,
oftentimes we believe that we are alone. Oftentimes we think that nobody else is going through certain things.
mm,
And I'm here to let you know that no, we're humans, just like you. We are human beings. We feel, we think different ways, but we feel we're humans. So you're not alone. And if there's anything, any particular people that you want me to bring to the podcast, just let me know and I will definitely bring you. You being requested, by the way, Leon, I didn't mention it to you, but you were requested. So
oh,
I
thank
hope
you.
the people that requested you find it very helpful. A couple of the questions that I ask you is based on the things that I wanted to ask you, and just want to let you know that you're creating something very powerful. I just want to continue to encourage you. Congratulations, all the amazing work that you're doing. Continue to be you. Continue to work on yourself, discover more about yourself, and continue to create more of the things that you are creating because you making an impact. And congratulations. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Omar. Thank you. And this is a wonderful space too. I'm pretty sure people are going to enjoy watching all these interviews. And as you said before, like closing the gap between what theoretically coaching and these techniques are and real life and what we're all struggling and how we want to get our message out there to benefit more people. So thank you for being a vehicle for that for so many of us.